Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to yet another edition of SOG Reviews. This is your friendly neighborhood reptile here back again, and today we are going to be talking about the Nintendo GameCube. I think it's one of the most underrated game consoles ever created, both in terms of design and how it performed back when it first came out. It was released in 2001, which was the same year as the Microsoft Xbox, released alongside the PlayStation 2, the Sega Dreamcast, and the Microsoft Xbox as well. So, that being said, let's talk about the console design. I also need to remind you also that it's also Nintendo's very first disc-based console after the N64, because you got to keep in mind when the N64 came out, it was in between the time where game consoles were starting to use CD as the primary form of media, like the Sega Saturn and the PlayStation as the primary example. But the GameCube, which came out I think it was like 5 years after the release of the Nintendo 64, I believe. I'm not sure. But that was when Nintendo decided, okay, we should definitely go for CDs this time. And even though the CDs were pretty small, it was still a step in the right direction. So anyway, let's take a look at the console design. This was actually one of the few things that a lot of people didn't like about the GameCube when it first came out. Like, a lot of people thought that it just looked silly and out of place. But with a name like GameCube, I don't know what else people expected the console design to look like for a console literally called GameCube. So I actually think that the console design, while it may not be the best console design, I can agree that it isn't the best. It definitely lives up to its name, that's for sure. So regardless on whether or not if you like it or dislike it, it does live up to its name. So as you can see, obviously it's a cube-based console. You have 3 buttons on the top, which is your open, your reset, and your power. Simple and straightforward. And there's also a little LED. There's also a little LED light in front of the disc tray that lights up when the console's on. And on the back is also a handle, which is actually kind of useful, because how many consoles can you think of has like little handles in the back? Only the GameCube is the only one I can think of. So you can also see that it has 2 memory card slots, and it also has 4 controller ports right off the front of it, so that way you don't have to buy any kind of BS accessory like, the multi-tap for the PlayStation, which, yes, I'm a PlayStation fan, I'm saying this, I do have to hold Sony accountable for that. So Nintendo and Sega are definitely a step above Sony in terms of controller ports, that's for sure. So on the back of it, you also see that you have your simple AC output, your analog AV, which is the one that most people use, and then you have the digital AV out, which is something that a lot of people have rarely used, surprisingly. I actually don't know too many cables that exist where you can use the digital one, but I'm sure there exists some kind of peripheral or something like that. I'm not so sure. But yeah, that's the overall console design of the GameCube. But also, back to the subject of the AV out, if you know me, you guys probably know that I use level height HDMI cables for all my consoles, so that way I can record them onto my Elgato in HD clarity, because the whole point of the cables is that they upscale the old consoles up to 720p at least. I know not all of them do it, so don't get the wrong idea. I know that the Sega Dreamcast HDMI cable doesn't do it, even though it still looks good, it doesn't upscale it. But this one, on the other hand, does. It not only works with the Super Nintendo and the N64, but the GameCube as well. That's because it's interchangeable. So, and the best part is you can only get it for $30 on Amazon, and I highly recommend it. But again, there will be a separate review where I will review all the cables in one video that goes for the PlayStation, the Sega Saturn, and the GameCube as well, even including the Super Nintendo. Like, I just want to show you what all the consoles look like, you know what I mean, and just give you guys some of its pros and its cons. But that's for a future video. So anyway, let's move on. Obviously, like I said, you can obviously plug memory cards in here, and the one I have is the Mad Catz one. I've had that one for years, actually. I had that one since I was 13. And the 16X size is actually a decent size, although you can get one that's up to like 64, which I believe is the highest one, or 128. I'm not so sure, but I do have the 16X one. But now I can finally talk about the controller, the GameCube controller. It's one of my favorite game controllers of all time, and really, I mean, just look at it. It looks great. It's so popular that Nintendo continues to create different variations of it for its newer consoles, such as the Wii U and the recent Nintendo Switch as well, simply for games like the recent Super Smash Bros. Game and among many others. So you can see that it has your standard A button, which is big, your B button, and then you got your Y and X button, you got your analog stick and a D-pad, which is not the best D-pad in the world, but hey, it works. And then you also have your C stick and a start and pause button right in the front of it with the GameCube logo in the front. Then on the back, you have the triggers and the Z button as well, which works very, very well. Not to mention, if you also look at the side grips of the controllers, you can see that it's very flat, so when you put it in the palm of your hands, it's really, really comfortable. Needless to say, it's one of the most comfortable game controllers I have ever used. And honestly, I think it's right up there as one of the greatest game controllers of all time. In fact, it's actually my second favorite game controller of all time. That being said, let's move right on and let's talk about some of the games. These are actually some of the games that I do recommend that you get, because these games really are good. One game that I do need to get out of the way real quick, because I only have the disc itself and not the physical case, is Metroid Prime. Metroid Prime is one of those games where it's an action adventure game, but uses the style of first person shooter elements, and it actually takes place sometime during the events of the original Metroid on NES. If memory serves me correctly, I think it takes place sometime after the first game, or somewhere like in between like that and its sequel. I'm not sure. The timelines is a little confusing, but that's just from what I know. Please correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. Basically, Metroid Prime is one of those games that's a must-have for your GameCube collection. It's got excellent puzzle solving, amazing graphics, a very ominous soundtrack, and very, very addictive gameplay. Especially if you're a first-person shooter lover, this one will definitely not disappoint you. It's able to combine first-person elements, action-adventure elements, and platform elements. It takes three awesome genres and combines it all into one game. So Metroid Prime is a game that I highly recommend for your collection. It's literally mandatory for your collection. Now, with that out of the way, let's talk about some of the other ones. So the first one I have right here is Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee. Now, this one can be somewhat of a hit or miss between video game fans, depending on the kind of fan you are. Like, I would say it's mostly suitable for Godzilla fans, but even if you're not a Godzilla fan, it is still a fun fighting game involving giant kaiju monsters just beating the hell out of each other. In all honesty, the graphics actually still holds up, even though the GameCube was very limited in the graphics department. But a big reason for why the GameCube's graphical capabilities was so good is because the graphics chip was made by ATI, also known as the now known AMD. So yeah, that's why the GameCube's graphical capabilities look so good, and in my opinion, I think it still holds up. Although the Xbox version of this game graphically looks superior to the GameCube version, and not to mention includes Mechagodzilla 3, also known as Kiryu, but I would still say that if you own a GameCube, this one will definitely add a lot of enjoyment to your collection. If you enjoy watching monsters fighting each other in different cities like Seattle and Tokyo, this one will definitely not disappoint you. So the next game that I want to show is Soul Calibur 2. Soul Calibur 2 is one of the best sequels to a fighting game, right next to Tekken 2, Dead or Alive 2, Virtua Fighter 2, you know, the list goes on. So anyway, you can actually play the HD version on the PlayStation 3, which in hindsight really isn't that much different from the original versions of the game, because all it does is that it makes the game appear a lot clearer and well, I would say just a little bit clearer, and it also puts the game in widescreen and allows you to play online, but other than that, it's graphically the same. So, but I would most recommend, if you ever want to play a fighting game with Link in it, besides Smash Brothers, I would say Soul Calibur 2 would definitely be that. If anything, I would still recommend that you own the GameCube version, besides the HD re-release, or any of the other two versions, like the PlayStation 2 version and the Xbox version, because the Xbox version has Spawn, the PlayStation version had Heihachi, and the HD re-release combines both Heihachi and Spawn. The only difference is that it doesn't include Link due to his affiliations with Nintendo. I mean, obviously, Link is a Nintendo character. But so, I would recommend buying the GameCube version just for the sole purpose of being able to play with Link. And otherwise, beyond that, Soul Calibur 2 is just a wonderful game. One of the best sequels of all time. I don't think it's better than the first game, but it is debatably better than the first, depending on your opinion. So the next game I want to show you is a childhood favorite of mine, Mario Party 4. Mario Party 4 is actually not that much of a favorite for most people, but many hardcore fans, including myself, consider it one of the best games on the GameCube. I generally love all the Mario Party games, but 4 is probably my favorite simply because I grew up with this game when I was a child. Like, I remember I used to play this game with my cousin Nasha Dante when I was 6 years old. He used to have a GameCube. Actually, he still has that GameCube in his collection, but he doesn't play with it anymore, but I know he still has it. In fact, I got this game directly from him. Piece of trivia. So I didn't have to pay money for it, thank God. Otherwise, if you did, you would probably be paying up to like maybe $50 or something like that for an old Nintendo game, because that's how they are priced nowadays. But back to my point, Mario Party 4, I've had a lot of nostalgic memories like playing this game, and beyond just the nostalgia really influencing my opinion on this game, not that my nostalgia should be the deciding factor, but for me it kind of is, simply because of the fact that this is the one I played the most growing up. Beyond that, though, it's a fun game with great mini games. Like, I feel like it's some of the greatest mini games of Mario Party. And I have played other Mario Party games. I even played the most recent one on the Switch too, which was also really fun. But 4 is still my favorite. But yeah, the mini games are great. And I also think it has one of the most memorable soundtracks on all of the Mario Party games. So this one will definitely satisfy you for your GameCube collection, especially if you're starting to grab one. So if you guys ever want some recommendations on which GameCube games to get when you first buy a GameCube, please let me know, because I would love to make a guide video, like a buyer's guide, similar to what Metal Jesus does. Although I'm not no Metal Jesus, but I'm just saying. But anyway, let's move on. So the next game I got is Mario Kart Double Dash. Hands down, one of the best kart racers I've ever played. Because honestly, even though in spite of its simplicity, it's a fun game. It's one of those games where simplicity is done right, but it's not. You see, it's not really that simple, though, because it does actually have some key features in it that makes it different from the other Mario Kart games. I mean, for one thing, the subline is Double Dash, and in this game, you're actually allowed to race with 2 characters in your cars, which can give you really good advantages, such as being able to hold onto 2 power-ups at the same time. And you can switch different drivers by pressing the Z button, and then you'll have one character on the back who's the one holding the item and using it, and then you have the one who is obviously the one driving, and the one driving is obviously not going to be the one to use the item unless they're in the passenger part of the car. So beyond that, a lot of the tracks in there is so much fun. It's a great challenge. I still prefer Crash Team Racing, but that's not the point, though. Mario Kart Double Dash is its own game, and is worthy of being right up there as one of the greatest kart racers of all time. And in my opinion, this one is probably the best racer on the console, like, in my opinion. So get this game. It will not disappoint you. Now, finally, this one is probably very obvious for most hardcore Nintendo fans, but it has to go to the king of the GameCube library, Super Smash Bros. Melee. This one it's just a definitive classic. It was one of the many launch titles of the GameCube, and honestly, this one probably would have been the one that most people got. In fact, it actually is, because it's the best-selling GameCube game ever made, and it's widely regarded as one of the greatest video games of all time. Now, the only problem is that I am not very good at this game. I do have to confess, but it doesn't change my opinion that this game really is very fun to play. It really is. And not to mention, it does require a very good strategy in order to get good at it. I mean, obviously, it may seem simple, and that's the thing. The game is pretty simple, but it has a very sophisticated fundamental aspect of it where you do have to really learn how to do a lot of the moves and the special moves and all that kind of stuff in order to get actually good at it, like you would see at tournaments like Evo and all that stuff. But anyway, Super Smash Bros. Melee is mandatory. Much like Metroid Prime and Mario Kart Double Dash, this game is mandatory for your collection. It will definitely not disappoint. Even people who are not into fighting games are definitely going to love this game, simply because of how it appeals to a casual audience. That's for damn sure. So, with that out of the way, let me show you guys the rest of the collection. I'm not going to show any gameplay footage, but I do want to show you some of the other games that I have in my collection. If you're a huge wrestling fan like I am, then you're probably going to enjoy this collection, and that is the WWE GameCube wrestling games. It consists of games such as WWE or WWF WrestleMania X8, WrestleMania 19, Day of Reckoning, and of course Day of Reckoning 2, which is actually my favorite of the series. But all four of them are actually really good games. It goes from good to great to awesome. So it's almost like the games just kept improving over time. So with the next few games, I got Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4. I have Sonic Mega Collection, which is a compilation title. You know how I should feel about those. Then I also have X-Men Next Dimension, a very average fighting game, but still pretty good for the cast of X-Men characters. And then you have Namco Museum, which, again, I'm a huge fan of compilation titles. As you can tell, I'm always a sucker for compilation games. And finally, NASCAR Thunder 2003. I don't play this one very much, but yes, I do have a soft spot for NASCAR, so there you go. So that basically concludes this entire review and my retrospective of the Nintendo GameCube. It's a very underappreciated game console, and it has a very impressive library of games. Again, if you look past its flaws, you'll actually realize that the Nintendo GameCube was actually a really good console, a very, very decent alternative to all the other three consoles that came out during the 6th generation. In my opinion, it probably was. I would say it was probably the best alternative to the PlayStation and Xbox, because the PlayStation and Xbox I felt like were a little bit too similar to each other, really no differences. But the GameCube, even the Dreamcast as well, were all worthy alternatives. But the GameCube was definitely a great alternative to what was out at the time. So go out there, buy yourself a GameCube. It will provide you with years of enjoyment. Buy the Level Hike HDMI cable. It's only $30 on Amazon. The guys at Level Hike are awesome. And that's it. I will see you guys in the next review. This is your friendly neighborhood reptile signing off.